Hello everyone, Bill here. Another engine run video. It's a good hot day here in Mississippi. Too hot to go sit in the sun, so we're just going to run an engine today. Today's project, it's been a long time since I've run a diesel. Today's project is Progress Aero Works PAW, a PAW 40 RC TBR, as Paul calls it, two-ball race. Ball bearing 40 RC, bigger than most diesels. We're going to put that on the stand today and see if it'll go. A few notes. We're going to start with mixing fuel. You can either pull out the instruction manual that came with it, or I just went online and pulled up PAW's instructions. They recommend fully run-in TBR. There's several different blends here for different fuels. They say medical grade oil, 20% castor, paraffin, kerosene 48%, ether 30%, and 2% isopropyl nitrate, or ignition improver. So that's what we're going to mix up. Other blends here, but 20% castor, 48% paraffin, 30%, and 2%. So this part's actually a little bit boring. It's just a matter of pulling out the ingredients that you want and blending them correctly. Probably the one thing you want to know most is where to get the ingredients, and I can't really help you with that. I bought ignition improver isopropyl nitrate from Fred's Hobby Shop. This is labeled the year 2000, so 13 years ago. Ethyl ether, equally old. I also bought from FHS. Red Max Fuel, they may still sell it, I don't know. I'm just using it from stock that I had. Castor oil, we're using Klotz bean oil. That's readily available. And kerosene, of course, comes from your local petroleum distributor. This I bought from just a gas station in town that sells kerosene. I'm going to mix it today using an assortment of graduated cylinders. I bought these in various places. Fisher Scientific is a good place. Sometimes different supply stores. Really a great place is eBay. And the table's pretty straightforward math to calculate what you need. Today we're going to mix up 16 ounces a pint. If you don't remember the math on that, ask your kids. You'll probably remember as well as you do. So let's get started. Castor. Alright, castor oil. We need 20% castor oil, mixing 16 ounces, 94 milliliters. In Klotz bean oil. Best oil I've found. I don't work for them, I don't sell it. It's just very good castor. Degummed, fortified. For the fact that they ship it red, this castor comes red, our fuel today would end up perfectly clear. Today it's going to end up a little bit rosy colored. Calculate twice, measure once. 20%, 95 milliliters, that's what we got. I could just mix this in the jar. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Could just mix this in the jar that we're going to use, but let's see if we get a better picture for you. It's kind of fun to see what you've made. All right, 20% castor. 2% ignition improver. I'm going to use 3%. Actually, it says 2 to 3%. We'll use 3%. So we need about 14 milliliters. Need the other beaker. I should have mentioned this from the beginning. Some of these ingredients independently are fairly nasty items, including ether, which extremely volatile. So please do it outdoors. Just to repeat, these are actually PAWs. Mix fuels outdoor. Take all necessary precautions. No open flame. Suppose that goes without saying. I probably should be wearing safety glasses. We'll pretend that I am. We'll simulate that. Alright. 3% ignition improver, 14 milliliters. Didn't pour very well. I bought these brown bottles with Teflon lined caps just for this purpose. It's the only way to get ether to last. The molecule is small enough that it evaporates through plastic. Ether, 30%. 142 milliliters. Check that twice. 142 milliliters. Can't get it on the video, but certainly can smell it. Nothing smells like ether. Alright, 142 milliliters of ether. %. And the remainder, %, kerosene. 48% is 227. I could just pour that in there. We're supposed to end up with a grand total of 473 milliliters or 16 ounces. Could have just measured up to here, but we'll do it this way. Perfect. worked out well. Not very scientific, but we'll give this a good shake. Just going to cap this, we'll pour it in our final bottle there. By putting the caster in first, 50 weight oil is all sitting on the bottom. I want to give that a quick stir so that we get a reasonable amount of the oil in our final jar here. Because the ether is so volatile, never mix more than you can use in a reasonable period of time. It'd be tempting to mix a gallon of this just to be done with it like you do glow fuel, but the ether will tend to gas off and your fuel will go bad. So just mix what you can use in a reasonable period of time. I'm going to clean up the glassware and we'll mount up an engine. This particular engine, PAW recommends something on the order of 11. Well, let me check my notes. Something around an 11.8. I'll probably try 12.7, something like that. So we'll get that mounted up and we'll see if it'll run. Okay, so we mixed some fuel, and I spared you the details of mounting the engine to the test stand. Suffice it to say, you got to get her mounted pretty solid. That goes without saying. We don't want it falling off. This happens to be a test stand that a friend made for me. Not a very big engine. We have some steel plates that'll fit down in there if I thought it was going to tip over, but not required today. Mounted it up. PAW says muffler pressure. There's no muffler pressure tap. I have at one point in the past tried crankcase pressure. I think I had this in a SIG LT40 at one time with a very large tank on it, and had trouble getting it to draw for the entire tank. So I've capped off the pressure tap that I installed. Let me get that back in focus. Capped off the one of the remaining vent lines on the tank, and this is just open to the air. Goes without saying, you have to have diesel safe fuel tubing. Silicone will swell and crack almost immediately. So ignore all the other plumbing. That's for different projects. Today we're just going to work with this little simple setup right here. Rigged a simple carburetor stop. For those not familiar with diesels, this is a compression adjustment. No spark plug, but there is an adjustment for cylinder compression. We're going to fuel it here in a minute. I have played with 1,000 different ways to fuel these things, and I keep coming back to this. Simple, tight, just for a day's use. I cap it off, make sure that the ether that's in it while I'm flying doesn't evaporate. And so let's get on with it and see what happened. So things to know about diesels, because of their extremely high compression and ability to adjust the compression to virtually make the piston hit the top, electric starters are not recommended. I will confess that I have in the past. We're going to try to do it without one today. Get you a better view here. Point it this way. I remember correctly from my diesel experience in the past. Be very smelly, very oily, and it's not like glow fuel oil. It's black and sooty. I will apologize now if I'm huffing and puffing. It's extremely hot here in the sun in Mississippi today. Word of caution here is that, sort of like an electric motor, this really doesn't require anything other than a flip to start. Electric motors have hurt a lot of people for just plugging in the battery and the propeller going. Similarly, with a diesel, we don't have to hook up the battery. Once we begin flipping, we're on the way to running.
carburetor. No idle adjustment, no mid-range. Just the one needle you see. It's under 2,000 RPM. Peak of about 9,000 RPM, running an 11.8 prop, APC 11.8. 11.7 might give us a little better idle. So it's a 40, pulling about 9,000 RPM. It's fairly zesty for an 11.8, 12.7, 13.6 on a 40. Let me take the camera off the thing here. This will probably highlight a few of the pitfalls of a diesel. Remember, it's 30% oil, so quite a bit more goo coming out, but more than that, because it's compression ignition and kerosene based, 50% kerosene, it will come out sooty. You really can't tune that out of it. Diesels are somewhat legendary for something the camera won't record is the smell. Not unpleasant right now, but after it sits in the garage for a week, mounted in your airplane, it can be quite unpleasant. Some may not mind it. I do. Not that I won't run one, but diesel toys don't come in the house. I did not fill this tank, only about half full. You can tell we're getting very good gas mileage. Some have claimed twice the power and half the fuel consumption. That hasn't been my experience. They have better torque and somewhat more power, and better gas mileage, but twice is quite an exaggeration. We'll see if it'll accelerate here after idling this long. They like to run warm. I expect it to go, but take a while to come back to full RPM. And it's a compression ignition engine, so temperature greatly affects how it runs. to it. I'm going to shut it off. I would recommend, because it's caster, filling it with air tool oil or some other lubricant. Caster will gum up and it'll be just too sticky to start next time. Be sure to put some on top of the sub piston. If you run it regularly, it's not a problem, but if you're going to store it, it will be very gummy. I had to clean this thoroughly before it would turn over today. So, that's all there is. I'm going to shut it off and begin the cleanup. Hope you enjoyed it. About a half an hour later. Got busy with other things.